Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football early Tuesday morning. Dan Lanning, the Oregon Ducks, land another commitment coming out of the transfer portal and former Florida State and Alabama wide receiver Malik Benson. And this has sparked what I think is a fascinating conversation amongst Oregon fans. And that is, hey, are we relying too much on the transfer portal at the expense of some of the young talent that's on our roster? And I think it's a fascinating conversation to have because I think there's a lot of programs that do that. And, they get so distracted by the new shiny players that are available in the transfer portal. They forget that, hey, we got a lot of young talent on our roster as well. I really do appreciate the side of, hey, are we over recruiting some of our young, talented kids that we've recruited at the high school ranks? I want to get into that conversation. Now, my early take on that conversation is look, one of the most impressive things that Dan Lanning has done with the Oregon Ducks is his ability to use the transfer portal in a very effective way, bringing in a lot of really good football players into this program over the last couple of years. They never seem to lose a ton of guys that they don't want to lose. That's something that we talked about all offseason last year is all the talent that Oregon brought in, but also keeping the young talent on this roster. It's a line that's hard to walk. I think a lot of college football programs do not walk it very effectively. Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks have. And so you look at Malik Benson and say he brings a very intriguing set of traits to this Oregon offense, but I don't think Malik Benson's a guy that is coming into the program and squeezing out a Jeremiah McClellan or squeezing out a guy like Doran Moore. And at the end of the day, this is the mentality that Dan Lanning has building this Oregon team, and that is we are going to bring in a lot of good football players at a lot of different positions, and it's going to be a lot of competitive depth. And if you're not into competitive depth, there are plenty of other programs that you probably have an easier path to play, but that is the national championship caliber standard and mentality to have. And so if there's a young wide receiver on this Oregon roster that looks at the commitment of Malik Benson and decides to transfer out, my personal take is this is probably not the right program for you because Dan Lanning is going to bring in competitive depth all over this roster. When you look at the cornerback spot and how many young cornerbacks that really could have played for Oregon that didn't, because you had a guy like Jabbar Muhammad, who was one of the best cornerbacks in the country. That's just how Oregon wants to run the program. Now, I want to get into Malik Benson. I want to have a little bit more of this conversation in terms of, does a guy like Malik Benson prevent some of the young talent from making an impact on this Oregon team in 2025? Now, before we get into it, as always, I think first and foremost, to the Oregon fans, whether we're talking the recruiting trail, the transfer portal, the 2024 season, the amount of support y'all have shown the boys over the last couple of months has been amazing. Many of you guys know there's not many programs I like talking about more. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, let it fly in the comment section. I think there's going to be a lot of Oregon fans that might not agree with the take I'm going to bring to the table. And look, that to me is the beauty of doing this. Hearing from you guys, differing opinions. We will be debating down in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Without further ado, let's get into Malik Benson. Now, here's the pros. Why am I excited about a guy like Malik Benson coming to Oregon? The set of traits that Malik Benson brings to the table is very exciting. 6'1", 200 pounds, runs a 10.4 in the 100-meter dash coming out of high school. He's going to be one of the fastest football players on the football field every single Saturday. That size and speed, it's really hard to find. Now, has he put it together as a wide receiver at the college football level yet? No, he hasn't, right? His career, 38 catches, 473 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is not a wide receiver that is a proven commodity at the college football level. He was formerly the number 1 JUCO prospect, had a phenomenal JUCO career, but he hasn't necessarily shown he can do it at the Power 4 level yet. But he certainly has some traits that I think are very appealing to this Oregon offense. And I think most importantly, the verticality he brings. This is a guy that at 6'1", 200 pounds, 10.4 100-meter dash, this is a guy you got to respect working vertically down the field. And quite frankly, I didn't think Oregon had this enough in 2024. You talk about one of the flaws in this Oregon team, which there were not many. The verticality was not always there, especially when Evan Stewart wasn't on the football field. He had a lot of good wide receivers. A guy like Tez Johnson, one of the best in the country, but his skill set is not, hey, I'm going to be a big body boundary wide receiver that works vertically down the field. He did a lot of his damage in the short, intermediate route tree concepts. You need these kind of guys. Malik Benson could be a guy that brings it. And you go back to the Oregon offense last year, Dylan Gabriel's average depth of target was only 7 yards down the field. Only 10% of his drop back throws travel 20 plus yards. There was a massive presence with Oregon 20 plus yards down the field. With Dante Moore taking over this offense in 2025, that is something that Oregon will want to get better at. Dante Moore's got a hose, and he's got a hose pushing the ball down the field, throws one of the better deep balls that we've seen coming out of high school. They are going to want to tap into that ability. Malik Benson's a wide receiver that I don't know if he's an all-around elite wide receiver. I think he certainly could be because of those special traits, but he hasn't shown that yet. At the very least, this is a wide receiver that's going to bring some more verticality to this Oregon wide receiver room that I think you could argue Oregon lacked last year. Now, in terms of squeezing out the young guys on this roster, my take on this was, hey, if Malik Benson coming to Eugene, Oregon is, I don't love the term scaring away, but pushing out some of the young, talented wide receivers on this football team, to me, this isn't the program for you. Because I don't think Malik Benson is an Evan Stewart like last year, where it's like he's immediately coming in and playing, and you're going to be riding the pine for 2025. I think it's very realistic that Jeremiah McClellan is more productive for Oregon in 2025 than Malik Benson. Very realistic that Doran Moore is more productive than Malik Benson. Jurion Dickey, Kyle Casper. This is not a wide receiver addition that I think should scare some of the young talent on this Oregon roster. To me, it's like a lottery ticket. You bring in Malik Benson to this offense and say there's a very good chance he's just not a huge factor in this Oregon offense, but there is that chance that he really puts it all together with those special traits that he has and becomes a really good football player. Oregon has put themselves in that position where they can take that risk. I'm a Michigan fan. We don't have the luxury of taking a flyer on Malik Benson. We need proven wide receiver production because we don't really have that on our roster. Oregon has recruited that wide receiver position very well over the last couple of years, giving them the ability to take a flyer on Malik Benson. If he doesn't work out, guess what? We got a lot of other good wide receivers on this roster. If he does work out, you might be getting an extremely dynamic wide receiver that's bringing a skill set that Oregon simply did not have last year. Now you start kind of looking at what this wide receiver room is going to be. I think it hinges on Evan Stewart and what his decision is with the NFL draft. If Evan Stewart comes back, you're probably looking at Justice Lowe taking over a little bit of that Tez Johnson role within the Oregon offense. I think Doran Moore is going to be a guy that, look, we've seen special wide receivers have special freshman seasons. It's seemingly, if you're a really special kid at the wide receiver spot, you can get on the football field early. I would categorize Doran Moore as a special talent. Am I saying he's going to come out and be Jeremiah Smith as a freshman? No. But I think Doran Moore has a very good chance at having a massive role within the, I don't think it's crazy to say Doran Moore could be the wide receiver one on this Oregon team in the 2025 year. You have Jurion Dickey, who, again, it's been a slow burn for him, but he's a guy that very well could put it together going into year 3. Guys like Kyle Casper, I think I already mentioned Jeremiah McClellan. There's a lot of talent in this wide receiver room, and I think you bring in a guy like Malik Benson just to add another really intriguing skill set to this wide receiver room. But at the end of the day, I think Dan Lanning is going to continue to try to create a roster that's as good as possible, and that means creating competitive depth. If Malik Benson scares off some young wide receivers like a Ryan Pelham that hit the transfer portal last night, you wish Ryan Pelham the best of luck. But look, this is not the roster for you because Dan Lanning's not going to just say, hey, just because you add a 4-star next to your name or a top 100 prospect, we're going to bring in competition to make you better. When you have a competitive room, it elevates everybody in practice. It elevates everybody within this program. If you want to start for Oregon at the wide receiver position, you damn well better practice well. You damn well better be a good football player. That's the mentality that Oregon is trying to foster. And I think bringing in Malik Benson further kind of fosters that mentality within this program. I think it's an intriguing wide receiver. I don't think it should scare off some of the best players in this Oregon wide receiver room. And for that reason, I think it makes sense. And again, Dan Lanning's track record is, hey, we're going to bring in a lot of good players in the portal. We don't lose a lot of players we don't want to lose. And until Oregon starts losing the players that they didn't want to lose, that's when I get concerned. But so far right now, Dan Lanning's building a roster that is built to compete for national championships every single year. We'll see how it plays out. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. That is my take on the situation. Some of y'all might disagree. Yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. Let it fly in the comments section. We'll get active down there. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.